Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're diving into an incredibly cinematic, experimental video presentation by Dr. Kem. It's all about a truly fascinating intersection of nature and technology. We are unlocking the black box of modeling constructed wetlands. Basically, we're bridging the gap between natural, muddy swamps and highly complex digital simulations.
It sounds kind of counterintuitive, right? But just think about this for a second. Can an artificial swamp actually clean our most polluted water? It's a provocative question for sure, but it perfectly sets up the incredible potential of engineered nature. You know, we've known for a long time that natural wetlands act like nature's kidneys. But now we're deliberately engineering these systems to tackle some of our absolute most complex, human-made pollution challenges.
Okay, let's dive right into this. A constructed wetland is, well, it's defined as an engineered, artificial wetland that's specifically designed to mimic natural vegetation, soil, and organisms. The main goal here? To provide secondary treatment to wastewater. So it's not just some random pond you dig in the backyard, right? It's a highly controlled environment designed to optimize the exact physical, chemical, and biological processes that we find in natural ecosystems.
So here is our roadmap for today. 1. Nature's wastewater treatment. 2. Inside the green biofilter. 3. The black box problem. 4. Process-based modeling explained. And 5. Testing the digital wetland. We're taking a super logical journey today, moving step by step from physical biology right into the heart of digital simulation.
Section 1. Nature's wastewater treatment. Let's get right into it.
Constructed wetlands aren't just for handling a little bit of excess rainwater from a storm. Oh no, they're capable of treating raw sewage, stormwater runoff, heavy agricultural effluent, industrial wastewater, and even your everyday gray water. Depending on how they're designed, they can capture heavy runoff, massively reduce nutrient loads, and actually mitigate heavy metals. Basically, they act as a giant, scalable biofilter for a huge variety of really challenging waste streams. It's pretty amazing.
And here's a statistic that absolutely blows my mind every time I see it. 90%. Look, while the plants growing on top look pretty and for sure play a role, the Purification, that's the community of microorganisms growing on the roots and the gravel, along with natural chemical processes, they're responsible for approximately 90% of pollutant removal and waste breakdown. The plants provide a carbon source and some physical structure, taking up maybe 7 to 10% of the pollutants. But that invisible microbial world, they're doing the vast majority of the heavy lifting here.
Section 2. Inside the green biofilter. Moving right along. Now, how do we actually put those microbes to work? Take a look at this. Looking at this cross-section of a horizontal subsurface flow wetland, you can see the wastewater entering on the left through the inlet system. It flows mostly unseen right below the surface. Notice that granular medium at the bottom? That's usually gravel, sand, or rocks. Right above that, you have the aquatic macrophytes establishing these deep root systems. And clinging to both those roots and those rocks is that powerful microbial layer we just talked about, quietly digesting the pollutants as the water slowly flows toward the treated effluent pipe on the right. We can essentially break this all down into a treatment trifecta. First up, the plants, or macrophytes. They filter suspended solids, release vital oxygen into the substrate through their roots, and provide carbon when they decay. Second, the microorganisms, or Purification. These little guys actively digest and convert the chemical pollutants in both aerobic and anaerobic conditions. And third, the granular media. The sand or gravel supports the plant roots, physically stores pollutants, and provides a massive surface area to host the bacteria. These three components just interact perfectly to clean the water.
Section 3. The black box problem.
Now, while we know that trifecta works beautifully, its internal complexity creates a massive hurdle for engineers trying to optimize these systems. Because of all the simultaneous physical, chemical, and biological interactions happening all at once, wetlands are often treated as mysterious black box systems. I mean, everything influences everything else. If you change the gravel size, you change the oxygen flow. That changes the bacterial growth, which then changes the plant health. Because of this massive web of simultaneous interactions, engineers have historically had to rely on empirical rules of thumb and, honestly, simple trial and error. This makes it really hard to accurately predict how a wetland will perform if the wastewater composition or the climate suddenly changes.
So let's compare these two approaches, because it reveals a really crucial shift. On the left, older black box models rely on simple, empirical rules of thumb and first-order rate equations. They basically just look at what goes in and what comes out. The problem? They only work if your climate and wastewater conditions remain exactly identical to the test site. But on the right,
we have the modern solution: process-based models. These are derived from actual balance equations for mass and energy. They literally decode the internal mechanisms of the wetland, making them highly adaptable and predictive, even when environmental conditions shift around. It's a total game changer.
Section 4, Process-Based Modeling Explained.
This is where things get really exciting. We are taking the physical biology we just learned about and translating it into the digital realm to simulate nature inside a computer. To build a complete digital simulation of a constructed wetland, researchers have identified 5 essential submodels that must work in tandem. Step 1 is the water flow model, simulating how water moves, often dealing with complex, variably saturated flow. Step 2 is the transport model, tracking how particulate and solute compounds travel through the liquid and gaseous phases. Step 3 is the biokinetic model, which we'll look at closer in just a second. Step 4 is the plant model, accounting for root growth, water uptake, and the release of oxygen and organic substances. And finally, Step 5 is the clogging model. This predicts how bacterial growth and trapped particles might eventually reduce the pore volume and block the water flow over time. Basically, the whole shebang.
Let's zoom in on that third step for a minute, because it is absolutely the heart of the simulation. Biokinetic models, specifically tools like CWM1 and CW2D, are the core engines. They mathematically simulate the aerobic, anoxic, and anaerobic degradation of pollutants. This is literally where the magic happens. All of that complex microbial digestion, the bacteria eating the raw sewage, is translated into multi-component mathematical equations that track oxygen, organic matter, nitrogen, and phosphorus at a supergranular level.
Let's actually put the 2 most advanced simulation tools available today head-to-head, the Hydrus Wetlands module and BIO_POR. If we look at the flow model row right here, Hydrus utilizes the Richards equation, which makes it incredibly adept at handling variably saturated flow. That is perfect for vertical flow wetlands that are loaded intermittently. BIO_POR, on the other hand, deals with saturated flow using a variable water table, which is commonly used for horizontal flow. Now, for their biokinetic models, Hydrus can run both CW2D and CWM1, while BIO_POR uses just CWM1. And notably, down at the bottom, BIO_POR includes that crucial clogging model, which is currently a gap in Hydrus. So choosing the right software really just depends on the specific physical architecture of the wetland you are designing.
Section 5. Testing the digital wetland.
Building a complex mathematical model is incredible, but how do engineers actually know it reflects reality? Well, on the left, we see the schematic for a real physical indoor vertical flow pilot-scale wetland. It has a main layer of sand, an intermediate layer of gravel, and specific dimensions. Now, on the right, you see its digital counterpart, the simulated transport domain. The researchers literally mapped the physical main layer of sand and gravel into a 2-dimensional finite element mesh on the computer. By running identical wastewater loads through both the real pilot system and the computer simulation, they can compare the real-world effluent with the digital effluent to see if the math actually holds up.
Now, a really critical takeaway from Dr. Kem's presentation is that you absolutely cannot just guess the physics. Accurate calibration of the water flow and transport models is a mandatory first step before you even touch the biokinetic parameters. The studies found that unless you physically measure properties like the porosity and saturated hydraulic conductivity of your real-world sand or gravel and feed those exact numbers into your digital flow model, your simulation will just straight up fail. The math only works if the foundational physical parameters are grounded in actual real-world measurements.
Which brings us all the way back to the big picture, perfectly summarized by this quote directly from the source material. Constructed wetlands are engineered treatment systems that optimize treatment processes found in natural environments and are therefore considered to be sustainable, environmentally friendly solutions. You see, by unlocking the black box with these advanced process-based mathematical models, we aren't just doing theoretical math in a lab. We are learning how to reliably design and scale better, more efficient eco-infrastructure to protect our global water supply.
So I'll leave you with this one final thought. How will the fusion of nature-based solutions and advanced digital simulations reshape the future of our urban infrastructure? As we continue to decode the incredible biology of a natural swamp into the precise, rigorous language of mathematics, the possibilities for sustainable cities are truly limitless. Thanks for joining me on this explainer, and keep questioning the amazing world around you.